Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a huge topic, the massive overhaul of the UK's immigration system. A whole wave of changes, starting back in 2024 and really solidifying into a new framework for 2025, is totally reshaping the rules for anyone looking to work, study, or settle in the UK.
The whole conversation around UK immigration, it's always complicated, right? And it gets pretty heated. This quote from The Guardian, "It's a cynical, idiotic doom loop," kind of says it all. It really nails that feeling of frustration and just, confusion that a lot of people feel.
So let's cut through all that noise. What's actually changing beyond this screaming headlines? That's what we're going to do today. We're going to break down exactly what these new rules are, who they're going to affect, and what it all really means for the future.
Right. To make sense of this whole thing, we've broken it down into 5 key parts. We'll kick off with the big picture reset, then get into the nitty-gritty, the new rules for workers, what's happening with families, the changing path to calling the UK home, and finally, the big switch to digital visas.
Okay, so Section 1, a system reset. The foundation for literally everything we're about to talk about is the government's May 2025 White Paper. Now, if you're not familiar, a white paper is basically the government's big policy document laying out its master plan. And this one is called Restoring Control over the Immigration System. That title alone tells you a lot about the direction they're heading in. So, what's the game plan here? Well, according to the government, the aims are pretty big. First off, they want to bring down the net migration numbers, simple as that. But the second goal is really the core theme running through all of this. They want to shift the UK's focus inward. The idea is to train and build up the UK's own workforce and, in their words, end this reliance on overseas labor. So how does that big plan actually look on the ground? Well, let's start with people trying to come to the UK for a job. This is where you see some of the biggest, most dramatic changes. The government is basically raising the bar, big time, for both the skills you need and the salary you have to earn.
All right, first up, the change everyone's been talking about, the skilled worker visa. Just look at that jump. The general minimum salary you need has shot up from £38,700 to £41,700. For any employer, that's a serious increase. It just makes hiring someone from overseas that much harder and more expensive, especially for jobs that aren't at the absolute top of the pay scale.
And it's not just about the money. It's about the kind of job too. This number here, 180, that's a really powerful illustration. That's roughly how many mid-skilled jobs have been just cut from the sponsorship list. Think about that for a second. Roles like plasterers, chefs, a lot of jobs in retail, they're suddenly not eligible for this main work visa anymore. The message couldn't be clearer. The focus is now squarely on graduate-level jobs.
But, it's a bit more complicated than just that one big number. That 41,700 figure isn't the only option. The system has these things called tradable points, which is a fancy way of saying some people can get paid less. So if you've got a relevant PhD, or you're what they call a new entrant, early in your career, or your job is on this new special immigration salary list, then that minimum salary can drop down to $33,400. But even with those discounts, you can see the whole floor has been raised significantly.
Now, for some of those jobs that aren't quite at the graduate level, there are a couple of temporary lifelines. You've got the immigration salary list and this new temporary shortage list. But, and these are 2 very big buts. First, they're only temporary. They're set to disappear by the end of 2026. And second, and this is a huge, huge change, if you get a job from one of these lists, you cannot bring your family with you. No dependents, period.
And that rule about dependence, it leads us perfectly into our next section, the squeeze on families. Because this is another area where the new rules have gotten a whole lot tighter, drastically changing who can bring a partner or kids to the UK. And the impact? It wasn't something we had to wait for. It was immediate and honestly pretty staggering. Just look at the government's own data from early 2024. An 80% drop in visas for student dependents, and an 83% plunge in applications for that health and care visa route right after they changed the dependent rules. The numbers speak for themselves, really. This brings us to one of the biggest headlines from all of this,
the Health and Care Visa, which had become an absolutely massive route for overseas workers, is effectively being shut down for new applicants from July 22, 2025. This route was vital for staffing the care sector, but the government made the move specifically because of the high number of dependents who were coming in with those workers.
Okay, so let's just recap who can actually bring family now. For students, it's basically only if you're doing a PhD or a similar high-level research course. For care workers, as we just saw, if you're a new applicant from overseas, you can't bring family. Full stop. And here's another new twist. There's now a proposal that all dependents of people on work visas will have to pass a basic English language test themselves. That's a whole new hurdle.
Okay, so these changes aren't just about who gets in the door. They also completely change the journey to making the UK a permanent home. The whole path to settlement, what's officially called Indefinite Leave to Remain, or ILR, well, that road just got a lot longer.
So, here's the proposal, and it is a fundamental shift. The plan is to double, that's right, double the standard time you have to wait for settlement from 5 years up to 10 years for most types of visas. Just try to imagine that. That's a full decade living on temporary visas with all the stress and uncertainty that comes with it before you can even apply to make the UK your permanent home.
Now, to kind of balance out that much longer wait, they floated a new idea called earned settlement. The thinking here is to create a sort of fast track for people who are seen as making an exceptional contribution to the UK. It would be a points-based system, maybe rewarding you for working in a key sector or getting really involved in their community. The exact details, though, are still being worked out. It's really important to point out, though, that this new 10-year path isn't for absolutely everyone. The government has confirmed there will be some key exceptions. The most important one, spouses and partners of British citizens. They will keep their current 5-year route to settlement, which is a big deal and recognizes those direct family ties.
All right, on to our final big change. This one is all about technology. We're talking about a complete transformation in how you actually prove you're allowed to be in the UK. Basically, the era of carrying around a physical immigration document is over.
So those physical biometric residence permit cards, BRPs as we all know them, they're being phased out completely. In fact, after the end of 2024, they won't even be valid anymore. By the middle of 2025, your entire immigration status, your proof that you have the right to live, work, or study here, will be totally digital. It'll be an e-visa that you access online. Think about that. Everything from showing your boss you can work to renting a flat will be done through your phone or a computer. And as if all those rule changes weren't enough, there's one more major factor: the cost. It's gotten way more expensive to immigrate to the UK for both people and the companies that hire them. Applying for settlement is now over £3,000. For an employer, the fee for certificate of sponsorship has more than doubled. And that immigration skills charge they have to pay, that's up by almost a third. It all adds up, and it adds up fast. So let's just pull all of this together for a second. When you look at the higher salary requirements, the much stricter rules on family, that longer path to settlement, and the soaring costs, the picture becomes pretty clear. The UK's immigration system is being deliberately redesigned. It's designed to be more selective, way more expensive, and to demand a much, much longer commitment from anyone who wants to come here. And that really leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? Is this a more controlled and sustainable system, which is what the government says it wants? Or is it simply a more closed one? Honestly, the true impact of this massive overhaul on the economy, on society, that's something we're only going to see unfold in the years to come.